welcome to Harris Hall. Welcome to the June 6th edition of the Board of County Commissioners regular meeting. Ms. Mokrajewski.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
Great.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning, Chair.
All right, we have a really full agenda today, Ms. Mokrajewski. We'll be working a little bit into the lunch break as well. We also have a 10 a.m. time certain. I'm going to check with you right now. The morning agenda, if it pushes beyond 10 a.m., do you think staff has a little bit of flexibility beyond that time certain at 10 a.m.?
Yes, I believe so, and I'll verify that.
Very good. Okay, thank you for taking care of that item of business. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
To the board, I see none. Any emergency business this morning?
No.
Okay. Then we'll move directly into item 3A, which is a public hearing and work session. And it is a public hearing. There's a public hearing and work session on fiscal year 23-24 budget adoption. And today, Ms. Mokrajewski, we have your panel, and I'll ask you to introduce your panel, and then I'll move into my script.
Thank you, Chair. Christine Moody, our budget manager, is here to walk you through the update. And really, today is for the public hearing, and next week will be for the adoption. So I think we do have one update, and I know you have a discussion later today about an item. Primary action today is to hear from the community regarding the now approved fiscal year 23-24 budget. So, Christine, take it away.
And if I may, very briefly before you begin, Ms. Moody, for those of you who are here to testify, who are online to testify, typically we have public comment at the start of the meeting. Today we have a budget public hearing, which takes precedence over public testimony. That will follow item 3A and item 4, which will be a statement by the board chair. So, Ms. Moody, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Farr, Commissioners. So as noted, this is a public hearing on the approved budget, so the budget that was approved by the Budget Committee back on May 18th. This is the opportunity for the public to come and give comment prior to the board adopting the budget, which, as mentioned, is scheduled for next Tuesday. So after the public hearing, I'll highlight, I did put a piece of paper in front of each of you on a one addition change that's happening in one of our departments and give you some idea of what we're seeing for adjustments from departments. And then we'll ask whether any commissioners are wanting any other changes prior to adoption next Tuesday.
Perfect. Thank you. Then this is a public hearing to discuss the budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023, as approved by the Lane County Budget Committee on May 18th, 2023. The public hearing is required to be held prior to the final budget adoption under ORS 294.438. Notice of this hearing and summary of the changes will be published as detailed in the public hearing agenda item. Participants may testify for or against any item contained in the approved budget. At this point, I will open the public hearing and ask anyone to step forward in Harris Hall who has testimony, specifically not general testimony, but regarding the 2023-24 budget. Do we have anyone signed up? I see no one signed up in Harris Hall. Ms. Jones, do we have anyone signed up online?
Let me check, Chair Farr. At this time, I do have 4 people in the queue for public comment. If you are wishing to speak on this particular item, the budget item, please raise your hand and I will call upon you. I do see 2 hands are up, so if you are wanting to speak for the budget, I will call on you now.
Now, Ms. Jones, do we have camera option on this, on today's budget public hearing?
Do we have what?
A camera option for those giving testimony on the,
yes,
the budget.
Everyone will have a camera option. I do see 3 hands up for people who would like to speak to the budget. Again, this is not general public comment, it's budget comments. So I see Buck Olson. Buck, I will unmute your microphone, and if you would like to be on camera, would you please state so now, and I will transfer you over so you can be on camera. Otherwise, you can give your public comment just via your phone.
I'm happy to be on camera.
Okay, one moment. I will transfer you to a panelist. You would see a button that will tell you to unmute your camera, and you should come on camera.
And Mr. Olson, I will state that you'll have 3 minutes to deliver your testimony. Keep an eye on the clock. At 30 seconds, you'll hear an audio cue that tells you there's 30 seconds left in your testimony time. At 3 minutes, your mic will be silenced, and we'll move along to the next speaker. Ms. Jones, thank you.
Thank you. You may begin your public comment.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Buck Olin, and I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at Mountain Rose Herbs, located right here in Eugene, Oregon. I'd like to thank Chair Farr and the Lane County Board of Commissioners for giving me the opportunity to speak today. The 2023-2024 fiscal year budget that has been adopted actually has a few agenda items that are of primary concern to myself and to many Lane County residences. I'm going to focus on one aspect of this budget, and that is actually renewing funding for the Association of the ONC Counties. Of course, Oregon has a long history as pioneers, as does this entire nation. And part of being a pioneer is making progress and looking towards the future, and of course, at times taking risks. And I'd like to point out that at the time we're currently located in, with the biodiversity crisis pressing down on us, with climate change, an ever-present issue of our times, we really need to invest in opportunities for our community, for our state, of course, for Lane County, to move forward, to begin to invest in infrastructures, in policies that actually solve these issues pressing against our community and our society here today. Spending any money on a membership in an organization like the Association of ONC Counties is really spending money towards the way that we used to solve problems and used to create funding here in Lane County. It's looking backwards. It's looking backwards at the time when forests were abundant, when logging was an essential part of the economy, and unfortunately is a short-sighted effort to maximize profits in the near term that ultimately sacrifices the sustainability and resiliency of our community for the long term. My hope is that this commission and future commissions will make decisions that support, again, the community resiliency and sustainability by investing in things like renewable energy, education, healthcare. And to do this, we need to look for opportunities that don't keep us bound to the extractive practices of our predecessors, and instead lean into innovation. Lean into acceptance of the challenges that are facing us day in and day out, and actually invest in opportunities that, again, will increase resiliency and stability for every member of Lane County. I want to thank, once again, the Lane County Board of Commissioners and Chair Farr for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Is that the conclusion of online testimony?
Oh, no, I apologize. I didn't unmute my microphone. Sorry about that. At this time, I have Travis Joseph. Travis, would you like to be on camera?
Yes, please.
All right, I will promote you, and you should see a button that will allow you to unmute your camera. Travis, I show that your microphone now is muted and your camera is muted. There you go.
Good morning. Thanks, board members. My
Good
name is
morning.
Travis. My name is Travis Joseph. I was born and raised here in Lane County, and I'm a resident of Springfield. And I currently serve as the president and CEO of the American Forest Resource Council. And we represent the forest sector throughout the West with a major presence here in Lane County. In fact, forestry directly supports over 7,400 family wage jobs here in Lane County, which is over 4% of the county's total workforce. And our members are the partners of the Forest Service and the BLM, who help steward our public lands, who help manage our forests, respond to dangerous wildfires, and provide renewable carbon-storing wood products to meet the needs of our communities. But I'm testifying you today as a Lane County resident and taxpayer, and as a former congressional staffer who worked on forest management and environmental policy for Democrats in Washington, D.C. I was an advisor to former Congressman Peter DeFazio, and I worked for the House Committee on Natural Resources, which has jurisdiction over the ONC lands here in Western Oregon. And I have firsthand experience with the professional work of the Association of ONC Counties, AOCC. AOCC is an important voice for Lane County and its interest in Washington, D.C. and the Congress. Lane County should have a seat at the table on complicated policy, legal, budgetary, and environmental issues that are unique to the ONC lands. That's the role of AOCC. No organization or group has the historical and technical knowledge of AOCC, nor is any other county group specifically focused on the ONC lands. And as a congressional staffer, AOCC regularly provided invaluable perspective, information, and data to Oregon's congressional delegation and presidential administrations, Democrats and Republicans, senators and House members. That was and is essential to making informed decisions about national issues, legislation, regulation, and congressional appropriations that impact Lane County and its residents. As a staffer who regularly worked with AOCC in the past, I was really disappointed by the misrepresentations of AOCC, its work, its people, and its purpose during past Lane County budget discussions. And I was disappointed by the county's decision to temporarily leave AOCC while still reaping the benefits of the bipartisan work that it does. That decision did not serve the best interests of the county or its residents. Lane County can't do this work on its own. So I'm pleased that Lane County has reconsidered and is willing to be part of the conversation again and have a seat at the table. This is a critical time for the future of the ONC lands, for rural and forested communities, and for the trajectory of essential public services that are connected by law to the management of the ONC lands. Lane County should be involved, and it should speak up and stand up for its residents. And that voice will be more effective as an active member of AOCC. Thank you for hearing and considering my perspective.
Thank you for your public comment. I do have one more hand raised, Deborah McGee. Deborah, I will unmute your microphone, and will you please let me know if you would like to be on camera?
I would love to be on camera. Thank you, Diana.
Okay, I'm going to change your status, and you should see a button where you can unmute your camera. Deborah, I'm not, it looks like you came over now. There you are. Deborah, I do show that your camera and your microphone are still muted. There we go. And your microphone too. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to have my voice heard. My name is Deborah McGee. I've lived rurally in Lane County for 40 years. I participated in a transparent public process 4 years ago that included a robust community conversation that resulted in the Board of Commissioners removing Lane County from the AOCC. There were a number of reasons the previous board voted to withdraw. One reason was that there's no evidence that the AOCC is helpful to the citizens of Lane County. Another reason was that the AOCC is a trade organization for the timber industry, a lobbying group promoting more logging in our forests. The AOCC's goals are incongruent with the climate action goals that our county has embraced. And why did you vote to rejoin? Where is your evidence that the $80,000 in taxpayer money to the AOCC does any good for Lane County, that it brings in more evidence? If you have the evidence, let's see that evidence. Be transparent, be open with the public. Otherwise, your reversal of a policy that Lane County citizens participated in and supported the board in making leaves me wondering what your real motivation for rejoining is. You don't seem able to quantify the financial benefit of joining, so I wonder, who does it really benefit? I object to you using my tax dollars to join a timber trade association that does not support my goals and values and the goals and values of many Lane County residents. I object to you making this change without citizen input, when clearly the decision to withdraw allowed citizen input and community dialogue. In the past, I have consistently voted to support Lane County's decisions and asks for financial support, but I do not like it when you spend my hard-earned tax dollars and give me and the entire community no voice in those decisions, and you don't even allow my representative to participate in a robust conversation. Instead, of the usual process, which should be involving facts, data, a clear-eyed look at all sides of the issue, you do a little quickie surprise vote. So I'm starting to see how you work, and it makes me wonder why I would want to continue to support your requests for money. Thank you.
Thank you for your public testimony. I do have one more hand raised for this item, so one moment, and I will, let's see, Penelope Kazmarek. I will unmute your microphone, and if you would let me know if you'd like to be on camera, I will add you to camera as well. I see you're unmuted. Would you like to be on camera, Penelope?
Are you able to hear me all right at this point?
Yes.
Okay, good. I don't need to be on camera to submit my statement.
Okay. Okay. You may begin your public comment.
Thank you very much. And thank you, dear commissioners, for taking my call this morning. I do appreciate it, and I also appreciate the hard work I know you all do to take care of Lane County residents and protect the quality of life here. I'm a lifelong Oregon resident, a long ago U of O graduate, and a happy grandparent of 3 little ones whose parents have chosen Eugene as the place to live for the reasons all of us know Eugene is an exceptional place to live. This morning, I'm happy to skip my exercise class for the opportunity of having your ear. My aim is to urge you, please, on behalf of all of the residents of Lincoln County, to please consider continuing the county's commitment to not funding the AOCC group. As of today, Eugene's drought monitor registers this area abnormally dry, and despite the memorable rain of March and April, we're just on the margin of drought conditions, a 75 on a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being extreme drought. As of today, the county stream flows, according to Eugene's closest ranked gauge, register 85 on the drought indicator scale. It's still spring, and we're well into drought conditions here. I mention this as it has become clear and been evidenced by clean, unbiased research from institutes such as Oregon's College of Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Science. Rapid plantation-style logging, as is predominantly practiced by Oregon's large-scale timber operations, and which characterizes the
Lost audio.
Yeah, Penelope, we are no longer able to hear you.
And thank you, Ms. Jones,
Penelope,
for managing the online
Are you
queue.
still there? Penelope, I don't know if you can hear us, but you might want to move your phone or something. We seem to have lost your audio.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. We'll move along. Thank you for managing the online queue. Is that everyone signed up online?
That is everyone, all the hands raised for this particular item, yes.
Now, I'll ask in Harris Hall, does anyone in Harris Hall wish to provide public testimony regarding the 2023-24 budget? Seeing none in Harris Hall, I will close the public hearing. And I'll mention this to you, Ms. Moody, that the AOCC, Association of ONC Counties, is not included in the budget that we're receiving testimony on today, I don't believe. It was brought up as a Budget Committee item, and the Budget Committee deferred to the Board of County Commissioners to make that decision. So no vote, no affirmative vote has been made yet to rejoin Association of ONC Counties. So we granted a little bit of latitude, allowing the testimony which was predominantly toward Association of ONC Counties, which is actually no part of the budget that we are considering this week. So, very good. Then I see no place on my script for remonstrances or comments from the board. Should we have a place for that, or?
I don't
Did I
know
just
that we
mess up?
typically have that in the public
On
hearings.
the public hearing, provide the following.
Typically, that's after you close the public hearing, you're hearing from and then you're free to make other comments.
Okay, then I will look to the board for comments. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. Good morning, Ms. Moody. Just a quick note to my colleagues and a heads up. We have a little bit of an unusual process specifically with our Human Services Commission as part of the Human Services Division budget, wherein they review, the HSC reviews a budget, and the order of operations, if you will, this year, and the timing of that, as well as the exceptional workload in that division, staffing transitioning to different roles, the governor's all in. There's been a lot of churn and conversation and challenge in that division. And so for anyone that read to the level of detail in the Human Services Commission budget, just a flag that there may be some adjustments made as we continue to work through that process and adjust to staff in new roles, new members of the Human Services Commission. So there may be some minor adjustments in a supplemental around the allocations pending some more conversations at the Human Services Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Further comment from the board? Commissioner Laval.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Thank you for all coming. Thanks for the online people testimony. It's great to hear your voice about this critical issue. I'm hearing a lot of 1990s kind of talking points, so I just want to put one talking point out there. I've spent a lot of time investigating and looking at hands-on treatment of our lands and forests, from public lands to private to large timber industries to independent little mom and pops that own 30 acres. And this last week, I toured the Holiday Farm Fire again with the Lane County Farms and Forest Families group. And something that was really striking I'd like to share with you, the Holiday Farm Fire is a model for principles of practice that the AOCC and like timber mines reflect. They hold the government accountable for responsible and sensible stewardship of forest lands. There was over 250 square miles of timberland that was burned, like by a hot nuclear furnace on the Holiday Farm Fire. And to see that destruction is something that is overwhelming. It literally burned away 12 inches of topsoil. It was so hot. So you see some of the roots of the trees still exposed that lasted throughout that blast. And I saw firsthand that the timber industry is coming to rally to protect the Mackenzie watershed. Now, these people are coming to plant trees, to restore the lands that were burned, so that rain runoff and erosion and all that doesn't put silt in our own Mackenzie water system. Our Mackenzie water system is the purest water system on the planet. And for you to learn about that would be something that would really be helpful, because the partnership of the watershed and the timber industry is insurmountable and critically important. And if you want to talk about the people who are really the environmentalists, I would rally to say the timber industry is our best environmentalists. To date, Weyerhaeuser, Justina Resources, and Timber private companies have planted almost 9 million trees in the last year. 9 million. I mean, I can't even think about 9 million of anything, let alone the actual workforce and labor it takes to go out there and actively restore lands that were burned that severely for the future of our watershed and generations to come. The timber companies and partner citizen farmers have aggressively sought to restore this area now, like already planting 9 million trees, like I said. This will not only sequester a gargantuan amount of CO2,
Chair,
because...
Point of order.
we are not talking to the item that's in front of us.
And I have granted the latitude for the public testimony regarding this particular item, so I'm going to allow you to continue, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. These trees will sequester a gargantuan amount of CO2. Growing forests are the ones that sequester the amount of CO2 that help our overall CO2 goals. Old growth timber trees are illegal to harvest. We can't harvest anything over an 80-year-old tree, and they sequester less CO2 than a growing forest. Our timber industry partners are our working environmentalists, working tirelessly for best use, survival, and the vitality of all of our forests. I urge those still recycling the same folklore talking points from the 1990s to go out as I have and see for themselves who the real environmentalists and what groups like the Association of Oregon and California Counties are doing to continue to be careful caretakers of those prized lands, our forest lands. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Further comments? I'm seeing none. Then we'll move along. Ms. Moody, any further comments from staff?
No further comments.
No further comments. Then at this point, to the general public, we have no further action on the public hearing required for this date. So the public hearing is hereby closed, and we'll move along down the agenda. Ms. Moody, thank you very much. Thank you for the public testimony, and thank you, commissioners, for your responses.
Chair Farr, actually, we do have a work session, just a few minutes. Work session should be very short after the public hearing closes.
See it there. Okay, it was a public hearing and work session on FY 2023-24. So Ms. Moody, please continue.
Thank you. So as noted, departments are continuing to submit anything that they may need corrected since they developed their budgets in February, March timeframe. So you will have those adjustments as part of the adopted budget next week. What I'm seeing so far is that it's primarily things about changes in contracts, maybe a change in FTE that has already been approved or will be approved in supplemental 4. So they're making sure that next year's budget also coincides with that. Now, I mentioned that I handed out to you ahead of the meeting an addition request, and I just wanted to highlight this for you. It will be in the adopted that's coming to you. It's not a net budget amount, money change, but it's a change in how we're providing a service in the Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services Department, and specifically in Youth Services Division. So they're going to change from a contracted model to reclassifying a few of our existing positions to be a little higher level. It's described in the memo for you, and then adding a mental health specialist position. By doing these, they believe they can collect some more revenue, bill for more revenue. They'll be able to provide a higher service level to the youth. So just wanted to highlight that for you as something that's happening there. It impacts both the general fund and the levy fund. This contract was paid by both funds, so they will pay the appropriate amount for the staffing change.
Thank you, Ms. Moody. We each have a copy of this in front of us, and the copy will be placed into the public record for today's meeting. Thank you very much.
Yes. And then my last comment would be just to inquire of the board if there's anything that you would like staff to go back and analyze or consider for any other changes prior to your adoption of the budget next week.
Then I'll turn it over to the board for answer to the question. Anything to review? Then we have nothing, Ms. Moody. Will that be it?
Thank you. That is it.
Am I dismissed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week for the adoption.
Yes.
Then we'll move down the agenda to Commissioner's business. If you look at item 4A, we'll go to Commissioner's business. And this is a statement, a Pride 2023 Board of Commissioners statement. This is by me. 2 weeks ago, I asked the board if we could have this item on today's agenda. The board unanimously gave head nods for this item to be on the agenda, and I asked staff to prepare a memo. I did do some edits to the statement, and I'm going to read the statement intact. Mr. Mokrahysky. This is a Pride 2023 Board of County Commissioners statement. As we gather here today to commemorate Pride Month, let us take a moment to reflect on the profound significance of this celebration. Pride Month traces its roots back to the brave individuals who sparked the Stonewall riots of 1969, a pivotal moment in the LGBTQIA2S+ rights movement. Their courage, resistance against injustice, and discrimination paved the way for progress, ushering in an era that recognized the fundamental human rights of all individuals, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. While we acknowledge the indelible legacy of the LGBTQIA2S+ community and their tireless advocacy, we must also confront the harsh reality that much work remains ahead of us. Recent data from the FBI unveils a troubling truth. Oregon ranks 8th in the nation for the highest number of anti-LGBTQIA2S+ hate crimes, with a distressing increase of over a third since 1996. These hate crimes have inflicted a profound toll on the LGBTQIA2S+ population, hindering their ability to experience the same quality of life as their fellow community members. Our own Lane County suicide report from 2000 to 2020 serves as a poignant reminder of the immense challenges faced by LGBTQIA2S+ individuals. The discrimination, rejection, fear, and harassment they endure have deeply detrimental effects on their mental health and overall well-being. To truly honor Pride Month, we must go beyond acknowledgement and take meaningful action. This starts with fostering a culture of belonging that embraces diversity and rejects othering. By doing so, we can create a stronger community that cherishes the inherent value of every individual. Additionally, we remain dedicated to fighting for transgender equality, recognizing the unique challenges they face. We must amplify their voices, break down barriers, and ensure our county is an inclusive haven for all. Within our organization and services, we persist in championing gender-affirming care. By recognizing and respecting transgender and non-binary identities, we create an environment where they feel genuinely supported. Studies show that gender-affirming care saves lives by promoting mental well-being among gender-diverse populations. Finally, let us also approach our work with a lens of intersectionality, which is a term to describe people's overlapping identities and experiences. It is vital to acknowledge that the experiences of LGBTQIA2S+ individuals are shaped not only by their sexual orientation or gender identity, but also by the intersecting factors of race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and more. Let's embrace this opportunity to celebrate LGBTQIA2S+ visibility while remaining acutely aware of the persistent challenges that lie ahead. Together, let us build a community where every person can live authentically, thrive, and be embraced for who they are. May we stand united in our pursuit of a more just, compassionate Lane County where love, acceptance, and understanding prevail. Thank you. Then we'll move down our agenda to item 6, which is item 5, which is public comment. If you're here in Aerosol to provide public comment, I'll call on you as you have signed up. You'll have 3 minutes to provide public testimony. Step up to the mic, identify yourself and your, identify yourself. The in-person testimony will be followed by online testimony, after which I'll ask anyone else in Aerosol if they wish to provide testimony to the Board of County Commissioners. So at this point, provide testimony to the Board of County Commissioners. I'll call you in order of signing up. First, we have Bill Compton, who will be followed by Ken Wells. Mr. Compton, please step to the mic, identify yourself. And I will remind you, you'll hear an audio at 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you.
30 seconds remaining.
Well, good morning, and thank you for allowing me back again. I so appreciate your service to the citizens of Lane County. It's been phenomenal to be a part of this last several meetings. So I want to begin by giving you a word of encouragement, positive word of encouragement. First of all, I want to let you know that I'm a part of an organization called Cornerstone Leadership Concepts, and they've allowed me to be a speaker and a life coach. And so I'm so excited about the life I see here in this leadership group. I want to begin by sharing with you something that I was reminded of by the life coach that has been my best friend for years. Amazing man. And he shared there are 4 pillars to quality legacy leadership. The first is character. The second one is competency. The third is consistency. And the last is courage. I ask you to be courageous. I ask you to be men and women of character, looking to what the Lane County residents have asked you to support. And so I would ask you to consider the seeking of stable long-term funding for Lane County Sheriff's Office. I want to say thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. Your powerful, articulate call to action to solve this ongoing challenge, not problem, but challenge, was phenomenal. I listened very carefully several times. You're to be commended. I thank you for your compassionate response, Chairman Farr. And I thank you for your passionate appeal to a particular methodology. I would ask that you understand that debate is one of the great and wonderful freedoms we have as Americans. Having walked the streets of Moscow and Minsk, as I've talked about before, there is no debate. But here, you have opportunity to debate, to seek the wise counsel and the gifts and stewardships of a great administrative team. And so again, I applaud you for calling for a group effort, a collaborative effort. But remember, there's courage in debate. And there needs to be, as was shared, true facts, quantifiable. And so I ask you, as leaders of this community, civil leaders of this community to be men and women of integrity, men and women of courage, and the administrative staff to continue to be those who are serving with competence and consistency. Thank you very much for allowing me to enjoy the time the last several sessions. I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Compton. Next is Ken Wells, followed by Melinda Preciado.
Good morning, County Commissioners. For the record, my name is Ken Wells. I serve as Mayor of Junction City, and today I'm here speaking as a resident of Lane County. I want to support Lane County rejoining its membership in the Association of ONC Counties. For over 90 years, Lane County and AOCC have been working together to ensure ONC lands contributed to our community's economic and social well-being. I want to commend you for considering rejoining. This conversation is something that only counties with ONC lands can participate in, and they have one shared voice in AOCC. Only 18 counties in the United States qualify to join in a shared voice. Cities and special districts, such as fire districts, cannot join, but are benefited from your participation. Membership contributes to the economic stability of our local communities and supports vital public safety and other essential services. As a member of AOCC, gives the county a more effective voice on issues relating to the management of the ONC forests, lands, and have resulted in millions of dollars generated for the county's finances. As you know, the dollars received from AOCC efforts go directly into the general fund, which can be used as directed by Lane County. Years ago, Lane County used to share revenues with its cities and special districts. It ensures the county is working proactively with the state and federal partners as a number of issues that affect our communities and us as citizens. It is essential for the county to deliver quality public services. These revenues can only help sheriff's deputies on the road. They also support other items like education and public health. Lane County's involvement in AOC will help ensure these revenues are available for the county to meet the basic needs of all of our citizens. Thank you for this opportunity to speak this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Next is Melinda Preciado. Melinda, Ms. Wheelchair Oregon Preciado, thank you for joining us today, who will be followed, by Chandra Lagu.
I'm Melinda Preciado, Ms. Wheelchair, Oregon, USA. Thank you for allowing me to be here to open your eyes to this crucial issue. The Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, was passed and signed into law by President George Bush on July 26, 1990. The purpose of the law is to make sure that people with disabilities have the same rights and opportunities as everyone else. The ADA gives civil rights protections to individuals with disabilities. The ADA law was amended by Congress in 2008. Yet, how far have we truly came with accessibility and inclusion? Why are these laws not enforced 100%? Sidewalks around Lane County are unsafe not only for wheelchair users, yet also those pushing strollers, those who don't walk well, and for other pedestrians. In addition, a large number of medical facilities in Lane County are not actually accessible and ADA compliant. We need to reevaluate what is thought of as ADA compliant. Do you realize that family members and caregivers have to change those who are physically disabled on public bathroom floors and many other awkward and inhumane places? This could be solved by having changing tables that work for all ages and sizes. public restrooms must be fully 100% accessible from the entrance to the stalls, to the soap dispensers, and for the paper towels. There is so much to take in consideration when it comes to accessible restrooms, yet it's constantly overlooked. 98% of restrooms around America. It's inhumane and extremely unsafe. In general, having access into businesses is a big task, from the parking lot to getting through the door, as well as just getting into the business itself and navigating around. Once getting into the business, it can be a huge challenge just to literally navigate around inside, and sometimes literally impossible. Push buttons for automatic doors will make a huge difference, not only for those with wheelchairs, yet even those walking with canes, walkers, and pushing a stroller. Doors can be so extremely heavy and awkward, it can be completely impossible just to even get through it, especially if you're in a wheelchair or physically disabled in any way. Adapting doesn't mean recreating, it means modifying what already exists so that it's easier for everyone. Human rights are civil rights, and disability rights are human rights. Let's get on track and prove that this is accurate. America isn't made for those with disabilities, yet together we can change that.
Thank you, Ms. Prashada. And I'm going to ask you this, following all public testimony, I'm going to ask if you would mind coming forward and having a group photograph with the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you. Next is Chandra Lague, who will be followed by Reverend Wayne Martin.
One more.
Do we all?
Okay.
We'll squeeze together.
Oh, no.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing that to happen, Ms. Lague. Now we have Chandra Lague, who will be followed by Reverend Wayne Martin.
Thank you. Chair Farr, commissioners, and county staff who are here. My name is Chandra Lague. I'm a resident of the South Eugene District, and I work for the nonprofit environmental advocacy organization Oregon Wild. On behalf of Oregon Wild and our Lane County supporters, I'd like to offer the following comment on the proposed action on today's meeting agenda. Later on, it seems there were different readings of the agenda today and how that process is happening. I'm rejoining the Association of ONC Counties and allocating general fund dollars for dues to this organization in a supplemental budget. In 2019, the Lane County Board of Commissioners made the wise budget and policy decision to end the county's membership in AOCC. Until then, Lane County's annual budget included spending roughly $80,000 in dues, in addition to money for the organization's litigation fund. Dues paid to AOCC were used to advocate for increased logging on public lands in Oregon and against important environmental policies supported by many Lane County residents, including litigation against expansion of the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument in Southern Oregon, one of the region's most biodiverse and favorite recreation areas. These policies by AOCC came despite a growing body of scientific evidence and legal precedent, not from the 1990s, that ONC forest lands are worth more standing, providing clean water, wildlife habitat, and climate change mitigation instead of just timber. In the 20 years that I've worked in Lane County advocating for these ONC lands, I've consistently found that the people of our county love spending time in protected forests, waterways, and wild places, and support the restoration of forests and watersheds degraded by past logging and associated activities. I believe it's clear that the future of Lane County's economy does not lie with increased harvest of ONC lands or further erosion of environmental laws as supported by AOCC. Instead, Lane County should focus on supporting the protection and recovery of our natural resources damaged by the logging practices of the past, including things like restoring the Holiday Farm fire area, so that it can provide its citizens the quality of life that helps attract people here. While my organization's main concerns with AOCC are associated with its advocacy for eroding environmental laws, as a Lane County taxpayer, I am also concerned about funding an advocacy organization that, despite requests for change, continues to be incredibly opaque. And quite frankly, there are a lot of other places where general fund dollars would be better spent. I hope you do not vote to rejoin this organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Legui. Reverend Wayne Martin is the last person signed up in Harris Hall.
Good morning. It's been a long time since I've been here, and we have some new people, and if you're available afterwards, let's have a good talk. I'd like to know you. I'm here to share some observations. One is that the number of people in the advocacy community that used to come often to these meetings and to the city council meetings has desperately shrunken. I think of Lori Hauber, Eric and Faye Labour, Vicki Nelson, who passed away, Doug Bovey, Sabra, Michael Kerrigan, Mary Broadhurst. The list goes on and on. It is actually frightening to me how few of us as activists remain from the days when we were starting to build a movement. What I'd like to suggest in light of that is that you conceive, plan, think, share with one another at work sessions how important it is, perhaps, to put together a commission alone dealing with homelessness. It is such a pervasive and painful reality, and it is only getting worse. Park and police activity amongst homeless, unsheltered people has just been on a rapid increase. So some kind of commission addressing only that problem, perhaps fitting as it would into homeless services, would be a very, very important suggestion of mine. Please consider it. The other thing is that perhaps your line item in your budget should include more. Does homelessness have its own department somewhere within your staff? Does it have its own line items? Is it highlighted as a budget item with sub-budget items underneath it? I think that's all I need to say. It's good to, one last thing, and that is that I'm reminded that in 2014, when Mr. Mokrahysky arrived, he essentially inspired us to do some work on something which is now called Nightingale Hosted Shelters. It's been almost 10 years. What you did as what I would call a charter member of our committee was extraordinary and unforgettable. I challenge all of you to step into those shoes. Thanks.
And thank you, Reverend Martin. That is the last of the public testimony signed up. Ms. Jones, do we have anyone signed up online for public testimony, general public testimony?
Thank you, Chair Farr. If you have signed up for the general public testimony, please raise your virtual hand now, and I will call upon you to give your public comments. Chair Farr, I do not see any additional hands being raised, so I will return the meeting to you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And I'll look around Harris Hall. Does anyone else in Harris Hall wish to provide testimony to the Board of County Commissioners in general session? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment session and open this up to Commissioner response to public comments and or other issues and remonstrances. I will mention we have a 10 o'clock time certain, and I believe perhaps Mr. Mokrahysky has mentioned to the staff present that we may extend a little bit beyond 10 o'clock, and the 10 o'clock time certain may be pushed back a minute or two. So thank you for your indulgence on that. Then to Commissioner's response to public comments and or other issues and remonstrances. I have two, but I'll look at the board. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I want to appreciate everybody that spoke today. I know that there's not many left, and there'll be some items later on that I'll speak to, but for this morning, I just wanted to note that since our last meeting, there have been 4 fires that have occurred that have come to my attention. On the east side of Lane County, we are technically in fire season now. It is robust, people are on top of it, but it is early. It's very early. It feels like we had summer at least an entire month early. We've already had the sheriff put up a level 2 evacuation in the East District. So I want people to pay attention, especially those in the wild-on-urban interface. If you haven't already had a chance to ensure that you've got a protected space around your home and other structures, now is the time to make sure that that is done. We are probably going to be hotter and drier earlier this summer than normal. And as was spoken earlier, we do have drought in our area. Luckily, it's not as bad as it was in past years, but it's still there, and it still is going to take a toll on our landscape. This is something that I'll be paying attention to, as I do every year. And I know one of the fires was in my colleague's, Commissioner Senega's area as well. So it's happening on the west side. So just be diligent. If you see something, call it in right away. We have first responders that are on top of it and ready to go. And I didn't even count the fires that within the Eugene-Springfield metro area that the fire district has been responding to, which I'm sure you've all seen on the news as well. And these include backyard burns, which are banned now. So please don't do backyard burns until fire season is over. That is one of the biggest reasons we get fires in our area. And for the majority of them, they are human caused. So if you see anything, please call it in. I'd rather you call it in than think, oh, that's not a big deal, and it get out of hand really quickly, especially with east winds, and you don't know when they're coming. We've been pretty windy in the last few days. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Further remonstrance? Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I will be brief as we have folks waiting. I want to thank Mr. Compton for your kind words and for being here multiple weeks in a row. We have to be here. You choose to be here. And I appreciate your choice and your attention to county business. Thank you for that. I'm sorry Ms. Wheelchair Oregon left. I just want to appreciate her attending. It's not lost on me that her testimony was around improved access and particularly automated doors, and we don't have that for this meeting room. And so I very much appreciate her bringing that to our attention and all of her important advocacy. Wayne, are you still here? There you are. It's really good to see you. We can catch up offline. I would love to fill you in. There is so much happening, and it's so instructive that someone who is paying as close attention and has been for so many years as you doesn't see the full breadth of the county's approach and response to houselessness, but also all of the work we do to prevent folks from becoming unhoused. And so I would be happy to catch up with you individually about that and the work of the Human Services Division and our housing work, and specifically to your suggestion of a commission working on that issue. We are currently doing some evaluation of reorganizing and restructuring our Human Services Commission and our Poverty and Homelessness Board. And one of the options available that under consideration is exactly that, is focusing the energy specifically on that one topic and then restructuring the other work. So there are folks specifically working on anti-poverty measures, particularly looking at budget around human services funding. So thank you for adding to that conversation. And finally, in the interest of time, I want to appreciate our chair for asking to set time aside and for the putting together of that really powerful and important statement around Pride. But really, I heard it not just as a statement around Pride, as a month that we set aside in recognition, but around a really critical civil and human rights issue. And so later, when we get to Commissioner's business, I'll be asking for support to really codify that statement and consider a resolution that goes into the record as policy naming the values and our commitment as an organization and as policymakers to doing all we can for my community. And I very much appreciate the statement, and the phrase in it that really spurred me to make this ask or make it later is where you said that we have to go beyond acknowledgement and take meaningful action. And so the statement was powerful and important, but it's ephemeral, it's fleeting. It's read into the record, but it isn't policy. So in advance, thank you for considering my assignment request later today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Further comments? Commissioner Lovell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of salad points on some numbers for those that were talking about the Association of Oregon and California Counties. The BLM does not allow clear cuts. We haven't clear cut a forest in over 25 years. Recognize that 57% of Lane County is managed by the federal government. If you look at 90% of Lane County is forest lands total, 57% of that is managed by the federal government, and 12.5% of that is the ONC lands that we were talking about. So if you look at that just from a farm perspective, if we're talking about building affordable housing and trying to have a catch up to 16,000 houses that we're currently behind, we're going to need some material to do that with. And about 12.5% of our county as farmed, managed, and responsibly environmentally sustained lands would be the way to get that done without increasing greenhouse gases from importing logs from afar. So I want to say that. And as of June, I have some thoughts as well. As a military veteran, I would serve all over again to defend the right of anyone to live their lives as they choose, so that they can be treated with respect and dignity and given an unwavering equality in all aspects of life, even if I differ somewhat in the opinion of people's chosen lifestyle. The month of June is also when we celebrate much. It's Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, Great Outdoors Month, Effective Communications Month, Family Month, Fresh Fruits and Vegetables Month, and even Zoo and Aquarium Month if you check the records. But today, for me, is June 6th. It's a very special day in American history, a day that unites us all and that gives us all the freedoms we desire and enjoy today. In 2004, I stood on the beaches of Normandy in a trip I made over there some 60 years after it was overwhelmed with the input and the invasion of D-Day. I stood there emotional, visualizing young men storming the beach to be slaughtered by thousands under the cool, frothy surf that was tainted by their own blood. It was the blood where Americans joined together to battle evil. This is what I'll fight for every time. For good to triumph over evil. For men and women to have the freedom to live their lives as they wish, without me being decider of class, judge, or jury of behavior. I will continue to fight for the character of all humans and not fall into the trap of deciding what characteristics are honorable, valuable, or popular. I will, as County Commissioner, represent Springfield, support and defend the freedoms that the supreme sacrifices of countless men and women have done in the military to confront these attacks of evil, and at every turn where they waged against the atrocities of fairness and inequality. I believe deeply the more we separate and classify our own, the less we'll ever find things we have in common. What you decide and how you decide to live is not between you and me, it's but between you and God. And if you don't believe in God, then I will always refuse to play his part. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Senega.
Yeah, we'll be real quick here. As always, Bill Compton, thank you for your positivity. That's great. Miss Wheelchair Oregon, sorry you left, but that is something that we will strive to work on. Wayne, that timing was perfect. Mr. Mokrajski is, I believe we're just getting into review session. So. Mayor Ken Wells, thanks for coming, representing AOC. It's critical for our county. It's critical for our rural schools. And as we ended our budget cycle, we know that we need to look at all avenues for revenue. Chandra, just want to let you know that 53% of all the ONC lands is considered critical habitat. There are no clear cuts. The most you can harvest is at a sustainable yield. As much as you can grow that year is as much as you can harvest. The AOCC they are stewards of our forest land. They truly do care, and it's a great partnership with BLM. It's not one-sided. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. That leaves me And I've got about 30 minutes worth of stuff. You all have, okay with that?
You good?
No, I'm kidding, I do not. You know, Mr. Compton, you talk of courage, and today is June 6th. And when I was growing up in later life, people said, what were you doing when the Beatles made their debut on Scene at 6:30? I know exactly what I was doing. My mom and dad knew exactly what they were doing on June 6th, even though they didn't know the Normandy invasion was taking place. The liberation of France and Eastern Europe was taking place. But they do remember it because my cousin Frank, who I called my Uncle Frank, was there on those beaches of Normandy on June 6th. And he came home with one leg less than he took over there. I love my Uncle Frank. I called him Uncle, he was my cousin, because he had a walking stick that I wish I had, and he did wonderful things with that walking stick, and he reminded me that, that he gave a part of his entire body to make certain that that France and Eastern and Western Europe were liberated during that invasion, during following that invasion, conquering Nazism. And so, you know, I think about the people who died on the beaches of Normandy on June 6th and the days following, not just the English troops and the British troops and the Canadian troops and the United States troops, but also the ones who fought for the Axis, many of whom were not there because they were Nazis. They were there because they were impressed into service. They were fighting because they were impressed into fighting. And many times soldiers are fighting because their country tells them to fight. Many times they're fighting because that is their role. And a second person who was there on June 6th was my Uncle Albert, who had been on the Rodney when it sank the Bismarck, but drove a landing craft onto the beaches of Normandy on June 6th. And he was Royal Navy, so he went back to the boat, leaving the men on the beaches. You know, it's we have to think about it, and we have to think about the many lives that were lost and the sacrifices that they give. And sometimes we have agreement or disagreement with the causes of such an invasion of Normandy and others. And but really, in fact, what happened on June 6, 1944, was pretty big. England, my country, Great Britain, was about this far from being invaded, by Germany and its Axis forces. The United States came to the rescue because England was facing an overwhelming power that really was far more powerful than Great Britain and would have taken Great Britain under if the United States had not come to rescue. And really, that's what we all do in our lives, isn't it? If we see someone weaker, someone who is more vulnerable, we come to the rescue, don't we? Let's think about that today, coming to the rescue of those among us who are more vulnerable than we are. The second thing I wanted to mention is a great man who passed away this week, Neil Van Steenbergen. Neil Van Steenbergen, I first met him in 1995. He was on the City of Eugene Human Rights Commission. And Neil was in his early 90s when he passed away this week. Couldn't tell it because he was very, very active. When he was 78 years old, about the time I first met him, he cycled the world. Wow. 78 years old. Neil Van Steenbergen. So God bless you, Neil. You're in my thoughts, my prayers. Thank you. And very last, Reverend Martin, you're still here? No, looks like he left. But Mr. Mokrais, he mentioned you, Nightingale, specifically. You found 3 different places for Nightingale to exist, temporary places, before it found its permanent location, which is on about 24th and Hilliard. Nightingale is today a model community where people who were formerly homeless are living in a governed environment, in a very safe environment. You know, Wayne Martin mentioned that you were integral in that. You were, Steve. You stepped forward. You offered land. You made that happen. You helped provide what is a model community that other communities have been modeled, have been patterned after. So thank you again for that. That concludes remonstrances, and we'll move along to the consent calendar. Mr. Mokrais, following consent calendar, item 8A is the discussion of the Association of ONC Counties, but we also have folks waiting for our 10 a.m. time certain. Do you see any issue with us postponing 8A until after the 10 a.m. time certain is concluded?
I'd suggest you take 8A and 8B and move them to after the time certain, and I've spoken with Mr. Adams, and he's certainly willing to accommodate that.
Excellent. Then I will, we have before us the consent calendar. Which is item 7 on the agenda. The consent calendar is considered as a single item by the Board of County Commissioners. If any item had been, if if separate discussion had been required for any item, it would have been pulled from the consent calendar and would have entertained it in separate discussion. If you wish to view the items that were considered by the Board of County Commissioners before placing this and allowing it to stay on the consent calendar, click on View Material. You'll see the entire packet that the Board of Commissioners has considered. With that, do I have a motion? Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair will move approval of the consent calendar for Tuesday, June 6, 2023.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Lovell. Today's consent calendar. Discussion to the motion. I am seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Then we'll move directly into our 10:06 time certain. Tongue in cheek. And Mr. Mokrahysky, I need my glasses for this.
I'm gonna, yeah.
It is a report and discussion on semi-annual Board of Health report, and I need to recess the Board of County Commissioners and reconvene as the joint meeting of the Board of County Commissioners and the Board of Health. So it is a report and discussion on the semi-annual Board of Health report, and Mr. Mokrahysky, I will ask for you, once they're assembled, to introduce your panel.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to just briefly introduce, I'm not sure if Director Gray is going to be here, but certainly Jocelyn Warren, our Public Health Manager. I'll turn it over to Jocelyn, and then I'm going to give my seat up here so Eve can come join you as well.
Thank you, Ms. Mokrahysky.
Thank you, Chair Farr, Vice Chair Trieger, and Commissioners. We're really happy to be here today to present our quarterly Board of Health report. I am joined by two of our epidemiologists in public health. I want to also acknowledge that Catherine Carvelli is also in the audience, as well as Dr. Pat Ludke here to support us. Very happy, and Kachina Inman. We have a big group here today. Very excited. We're bringing to you today a sort of updates on basically our community health improvement plan metrics. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Webster and Sadie Barata. And I will advance your slides for you. Just let me know.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Farr, Vice Chair Trieger, and Commissioners. I'm Sadie Barata. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the epidemiologist for the Prevention Program in Public Health. And first, I want to acknowledge that Lane County is located on the Kalapuya Ilahi, the traditional indigenous homeland of the Kalapuya people. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation of Western Oregon. Today, Kalapuya descendants are primarily citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. And they continue to make important contributions to their communities, to Oregon, and to the world, even though the history of genocide still affects them to this day. Also, in acknowledgement of Pride Month, I want to say thank you, Commissioner Farr, for your statement and reiterate that one way to work towards a healthier and happier community is to make our community safe for people to be their authentic selves and love who they love without fear of hatred and harm.
Thank you, Sadie. I'm Jennifer Webster. I'm the epidemiologist with the Community Partnerships Program at Lane County Public Health. And the purpose of our presentation today is to share some of the baseline indicators for our Community Health Improvement Plan and show how they are tied to Lane County's strategic plan while demonstrating the importance of addressing structural and social determinants of health as part of the implementation of both plans to improve overall community health. And I also want to appreciate the Pride statement this morning because I think it is an illustration of a first step towards addressing some of those structural determinants.
Our community health assessment, known as the CHA, and our community health improvement plan, known as the CHIP, is conducted by a collaborative partnership between Lane County Public Health, Lane County's two coordinated care organizations, or CCOs, Trillium and Pacific Source, Peace Health Hospital, and United Way of Lane County. This collaboration is formally branded as Live Healthy Lane. This work relies on community involvement and engagement for collective impact, and we can only be as successful as we are willing to share our power. Next slide. Our CHA-CHIP process is on a 5-year cycle because both public health and the coordinated care organizations are required by OHA to complete a new assessment and develop a community health improvement plan every 5 years. Our last CHA was completed in 2019, and the CHIP was approved a little bit late in 2021 due to the pandemic, putting us in the implementation phase. We are currently working on an evaluation to report on our progress towards the CHIP priorities. Our current CHIP has 3 priorities. listed out here. As they are connected, we have one goal, which is to create the community conditions necessary to promote behavioral health and physical wellness across the lifespan for all people in Lane County. Outlined in the CHIP are also 4 strategies to help us reach that goal.
In 2021, a committee of Live Healthy Lane partners and community representatives came together to develop the indicators for measuring progress on the CHIP. And today we're going to walk through some of those indicators to demonstrate alignment with the county strategic plan as we illustrate the importance of structural and social determinants to overall health in the community. And just before we dive into the actual indicators, I just want to highlight that these are baseline data from 2019. And as Sadie mentioned, we are in the process of updating those data. The indicators were also chosen specifically to measure progress after 5 years, so we would not really expect a lot of change in those indicators at this point in time. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, we actually expect that many of these indicators will have worsened because of those impacts. And also just to highlight, these is just what we are sharing today is just a selection, but all of the indicators are available with information about where the data come from on the website.
Strategic Priority 1 in the Lane County Strategic Plan highlights one of the key social determinants of health, income and income inequality. Many indicators of health have a strong association with income level, with health outcomes improving as income levels improve. There is also significant evidence that communities with greater income inequality, extreme differences between those with the most wealth and those with the least, experience poorer health outcomes for all people. One health area where financial stress and poverty can take a huge toll is in mental health. There is ample evidence that those experiencing financial hardship experience greater levels of stress, which can lead to poor mental health outcomes, and those poor outcomes can be intergenerational, impacting not only the adults experiencing the financial hardship, but also impacting the children and the youth in that family. Data from the Oregon Behavioral Health Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System show a number of disparities in mental health among Lane County adults. Younger adults under age 35, adults with less than a bachelor's degree, adults reporting 1 or more disabilities, and adults with an income below 100% of the federal poverty level report the highest rates of poor mental health. There has been an alarming trend of worsening mental health among youth in Lane County, the state, and nationally since 2015. While the pandemic certainly did not help, it is also not the root cause of declining mental health. Data from the Oregon Healthy Teens Survey show that 8th and 11th graders who receive free or reduced lunch, which is used as a proxy for income level, reported higher rates of depression than their cohorts overall, as well as those who did not receive free or reduced lunch. Youth who identify as a gender other than male also experience depression at higher rates than their cohorts overall.
So Lane County's second strategic priority emphasizes the importance of community engagement and equity as we strive to address the growing housing crisis in Lane County. And we all know that access to housing is an important social determinant of health, and many studies have demonstrated that communities with greater inequities also have poorer health outcomes. Lane County's history of racism and exclusion has led to tremendous disparities in the social determinants of health, including housing. Here we see the stark inequity in home ownership based on race and ethnicity in Lane County, with white households living in owner-occupied homes at a higher rate than the county overall, and households of every other race and ethnicity living in owner-occupied homes at a lower rate than the county overall. To effectively address these inequities and stop perpetuating the structural barriers created by our racist and exclusionary history will require the use of an equity lens with a robust community engagement process that involves the impacted communities, as outlined in Lane County's strategic plan. Developing housing policies and economic development initiatives that address these inequities are necessary to improve the health of our community overall. And as you know, home ownership in the United States is the most common way to create intergenerational health, or intergenerational wealth and health, but I was mostly thinking of wealth. And so this disparity in home ownership also leads to financial disparities. Next slide, please. So even before the pandemic, Lane County experienced higher rates of poverty than the state and the nation overall, a situation that is likely to have been exacerbated by the current housing crisis and rising inflation. Lane County incomes have just not kept up with the cost of living, a situation that creates more stress on our systems, our communities, and takes away from the community's health overall. Lane County's third strategic priority addresses the importance of local economic success to creating healthy and vibrant communities. People and families who can meet their basic needs are more able to be engaged in civic life, which leads to greater community connectivity and a sense of belonging, both of which are vital to the community's mental and physical well-being, as we have seen. Also, in a much more direct way, people and families who struggle to meet their basic needs often forego seeking health care, which means they are more likely to experience poor health outcomes. Median household income for all racial and ethnic groups in Lane County fall far short of the income needed to support a family. However, white households in Lane County report median income at a higher rate than the county overall, while Indigenous and Asian households report having lower incomes than the county overall. And disparities in median income also exist based on geography in Lane County. And here you can see the areas with household incomes that are higher than the median, as shaded darker, and those that are lower than the median, shaded lighter by zip code. These inequities within communities erode trust, decrease a sense of belonging, and contribute to less civic engagement, all of which contribute to less community vibrancy, less community connectivity, and a decrease in local economic success. Improving economic equity is vital to the overall success and health of Lane County, which is why both the Lane County Strategic Plan and the Community Health Improvement Plan stress equity in their priorities.
Despite the challenges of COVID, we have made progress on the CHIP, which we are detailing in our earlier mentioned progress report. We have a steering committee that is focused on implementing the CHIP in our community, as well as increasing our community's knowledge of the CHIP. The steering committee partnered with Siuslaw Vision and Be Your Best Cottage Grove to complete the Rural Health Equity Pilot Project. And is currently collaborating with our Regional Health Equity Coalition, known as RISE of the Umpqua and Willamette Valleys, to highlight a few of those successes. HNHS has worked on several initiatives to advance the CHIP priorities, including the Dovetail program, the work to build the Stabilization Center, and the creation of our Community Partnerships program. This is only some of the work happening in the county, and these are listed in more detail along with other examples in the board packet.
And as Jocelyn mentioned, we're very excited to begin starting the next process of assessing the community's health and creating a new community health improvement plan. We are super excited that the framework that we have been using since 2010 has been undergoing a major revision in the last few years, the Mobilizing for Action through Planning and Partnership, which we chose because of its robust community engagement process, is actually building more on those community engagement processes and has a very strong equity focus. And so we're excited to begin working with our community partners and with you in the next few months and years as we build the next community health improvement plan. And then we're happy to take questions.
Wow. And we have many of the slides that you provided today, we do have in our presentation that anyone can access online. So thank you very much. So we'll move forward into discussion and questions from the Board of County Commissioners. Dr. Warren, I'm sorry. Do you have anything you need to add?
No, we can turn it over to you for questions. Thank you.
Very good. Then we are open for questions. I have a couple myself and a bit of a statement, but I'll look around the board, see if I have to go first. I don't have to go first. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. You had mentioned near the end there regarding the Rural Health Equity Project. Can you expand on that just a little bit more?
Yeah, with Be Your Best, I actually can probably send you some more information. I wasn't part of that project. That was prior to my time here.
That would be great. Thank you.
But I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
I am aware of Be Your Best, and I get updates from them, so I'm not sure if it's the same update. But part of rural health equity to me is our expansion into that area of mobile response and a Kahoot-style health response in that area. This kind of borders on your report today, but if there's any update on that, I'd also like to hear that too.
I can take that one because some of the work, most of the work is happening in other divisions. So in terms of mobile crisis response, Dr. Gishohi is leading up a group looking at how we accomplish the what's now a directive, which is phenomenal from the OHA. We hope that it will be fully funded here in the next budget cycle in order to assure that we have access to mobile crisis for all residents in Lane County. So right now, the services that we have available are in Eugene, Springfield, and Western Lane, mostly Florence, but a little bit outside of Florence into the Mapleton area in coordination with the sheriff. But we need to modify those services a little bit because we can't have a response model that relies on law enforcement. And then the remainder of the county is what we are looking at, making sure we have coverage for. The planning for that will happen between now and the end of this calendar year, and the intent is that we will have full coverage in Lane County next calendar year. So that's the mobile crisis piece. And then in terms of growth of access to medical care in rural areas, we are actively looking at doing that both in mobile formats, as well as, of course, we all are aware of South Lane Clinic, but we also know that there are large providers leaving rural communities and leaving healthcare spaces vacant. And when we identify those spaces, I actually have a tour next week in one of our rural areas to look at those spaces and identify whether it makes sense for us to cover those vacancies in our mobile response ongoing, or whether it makes sense for us to have additional standing locations. So continuing to evaluate those opportunities as they come available. Of course, building our own facility is, as you're aware, such a big project. We're hoping that we can find existing spaces wherever possible as we continue this work. So that's where those particular pieces are now. Dr. Warren, do you want to say anything else on mobile as it relates to the public health work?
Thank you, Eve. We are continuing to develop the mobile outreach. We have a great mobile team, and as you know, also a clinic. The funding that was used to sustain that was COVID funding, so that is coming to an end. So as that comes to an end, we are seeking external revenue and other sources to be able to put together a more robust mobile team that can do preventive health care and provide other services throughout Lane County. That work is ongoing. And as it develops, we will certainly keep the board updated.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Seneca.
Oh, no, I'm good for
I'm sorry. Commissioner Lovell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First, I want to thank you for coming, and then secondly, I want to apologize. I am still learning all of the buzzwords everybody uses, so I'm trying to draw something out of this that I can really hang a hook on, from my thinking as an entrepreneur and how we're going to solve some of these crises. And, I read a book one time that said, the poor you'll always have with you. So if that's a truism, what do we who have, how are we going to help those who have not? And I guess the question that kept coming in my mind when you were talking was, if we change the economic disparity, is that really the key to the health and the mental health of the county? I heard a lot of talk about economic disparity, and I'm all about economic development. I think Lane County is way under economically developed. I think Lane County is the hardest place in the world to make a living in for I don't know what reason, but we tend to shoot ourselves in the knees at every turn. So I guess the question is this really an economic topic or question we're asking ourselves about mental health? And if we really get our business mind wrapped around us, we're going to make great inroads in mental health. Is that what I'm hearing?
That one, yeah. Yeah, there is an overwhelming body of research at this point that shows, first of all, there's a direct association between income level and health outcomes. So the more poor you are, the poorer your health outcomes are likely to be over the life course. So improving people's income is definitely going to improve people's health. There's also a very large body of evidence that shows that income disparity or economic inequity within a community also contributes to poor health outcomes for everyone, not just the poorest in the community. So when you compare two communities, one with great economic inequality and one with very little economic inequality, the health outcomes for the people in the community with great inequality also have poorer health than everyone in the community with less inequality. That goes across the entire income scale. And there's a direct correlation. So the greater the inequity, the poorer the health outcomes for everyone, even the richest people in those communities which have great disparities. And so yes, reducing economic inequality and inequities within Lane County would be of tremendous health benefit to the community.
And would you also speak to a little bit how the data suggest intersectionality as an impact in health outcomes as well? So
Can we define that word just for the public's sake?
Sure. Intersectionality as that you may be low income, but if you are low income and of a race other than white, or your immigration status is not citizen, or you identify as LGBTQIA2+. I'm still getting the length of that one. But, how that can also have an impact. Because, I think the question is partially around income and then partially around if we solve the income inequality, will it solve the issues that we're seeing here in terms of inequities? And so do you have any data on the intersectionality piece?
Well, I don't off the top of my head, but yes, I think that income inequality is one thing that's very well studied, that it does impact poor health outcomes. And then inequalities around race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation also have impacts on health outcomes. And so these impacts are compounded when they exist together. So and not in a one-to-one or linear way. It's very complex the way those intersections happen. But yes.
Sure.
I would also like, to elaborate on Jennifer's point as well, that raising income for all wouldn't necessarily fix the problem, because as the wealthier get wealthier, even if the poor become slightly wealthier, that inequality still exists. And so it is about finding that middle of raising up the most vulnerable and not raising everybody up, because then that inequality still exists. And like we have the data on, those health outcomes are still poor for those communities.
So how do we approach the issue or the concept of a rising tide raises all boats? I mean, is the public health department now going to become an economic arm of Lane County so that we can help do that? Or what's really the specific plan going forward? haven't heard one yet. So that's why I'm asking the question. How are we going to change the disparity? I mean, what's the plan?
So the health improvement plan is also a strategic plan for the entire community. So we work with our partners to create that plan, and it is not meant to be public health's job to do all of the work, because we in public health understand that there's a lot of things outside of our influence and our sphere of control that have tremendous impacts on health. And so the health improvement plan is really meant to be a way to bring the community together and work together to solve complicated issues that no one organization or agency can solve alone. And so there are strategies laid out in the plan that are suggested for how to approach the economic questions that are not really public health's area of expertise.
And Commissioner Laval, if I might, this body also has a large role in advancing the Community Health Improvement Plan. And as we develop the next one, we will be coming to you also for your input on and feedback on the strategies that you would like to see represented in that plan. So that will certainly be a big part of our next development. So we look forward to engaging with you on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Laval. We'll go to the queue, which is Vice Chair Trieger, followed by Commissioner Senega.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. I always want us to just spend all day talking about this because the three important words, right? Community, health, improvement. I mean, there it is. There's what we're trying to do from all kinds of different angles. And I really am glad that Commissioner Laval brought up this idea of where does the economy impact health. But, a thriving economy doesn't necessarily equate to decreased inequality. for example. I mean, we see that all the time, and we must be getting close to time for Brian Rooney to come back and meet with us again and talk about economic indicators specifically. But as a great example, if we have a thriving tourism economy, we still have great income inequality because the nature of those jobs, while the economic impact on the community as a whole is a positive, the people who are doing the work, there's great wealth inequality. And to the point about, for instance, intersectionality, the bulk of the folks doing that work, the lower you go on the wage scale, the less white and more female that workforce becomes, for example. So that's just one example of how I wish it was as simple as creating some good economic development initiatives and suddenly everyone's income would go up and we would be reducing unequal health outcomes. Additionally, as you all know, I'm not telling you anything new, these things are multi-generational, so we can't reverse them by bringing, say, a new sector into the community that has good paying wages. It doesn't undo generations of poor health outcomes and inequality. So there's a lot to dig into. To that, I'm also noticing we have an update on the ACEs report, on the Adverse Childhood Experiences report, and some of the policy recommendations. So I don't know if anybody at this panel wants to speak to that, or if that's for the ACEs update of how the work of the CHIP and the CHA integrate with what we know about ACEs.
Commissioner Trieger, thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely, is a great intersection between the work that we can do toward reducing the impact of ACEs across generations, and I appreciate the idea that the impact across generations is really significant, and it's not something necessarily that you can change overnight. There is a lot we can do to mitigate the effects, and we do have programs that are that do that work, especially in our nurse home visiting programs and some of the other prevention programs that we have in the prevention section as well that are school-based. That work is really key, and we can discuss that later today when we have the members of our Public Health Advisory Committee who have put together that report. They're very interested in this topic as well, so we look forward to that conversation this afternoon.
Great. Just a couple more things to that end. On the policy side, we know right here in Oregon, and we have some of the strongest tobacco prevention policy. And so the poor health outcomes related, for example, to chronic disease that's tied to tobacco use, alcohol and cannabis use, as you have in the presentation. I'm curious about the data and the timing, if you know when new data sets are available, and what we might see in chronic disease in the community. Of course, it's hard correlation, causation to tease those apart, but if you anticipate when we might start seeing the next set of data so we can look at how we're doing on those chronic disease graphs.
I wish I had better news for that. So for chronic disease data, we rely on the behavioral risk factor surveillance system that the state implements on behalf of the CDC. And the most current data available right now is from 2019. And so we only get that data like every 2 or 3 years. And so.
Is that true for the mental health data as well, or just the chronic disease?
For adult mental health, yes. For youth mental health, we get data from the state through the Student Health Survey, and that is done every 2 years. And the state has assured us that 2022 data will be available very soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Senega.
Yeah, something that I've been mulling over is the 8th and 11th graders who receive free or reduced lunches. Well, first of all, why just those 2 grades?
That's who's surveyed in the.
What's that?
The Student Health Survey surveys 6th, 8th, and 11th graders, and only recently have they started doing 6th grade. So 8th and 11th are the 2 years they do the survey.
Well, I'm thinking a little bit with my school board hat on and as a coach. A lot of the students with free or reduced lunches are the ones that show up to practice by themselves. You know, they walked from somewhere, or then after practice, almost dark, they're the ones leaving. Big picture, I mean, how do you start to fix these? I mean, these are obviously dysfunctional homes in my mind. I don't know if that's, I mean, what's first? The inequity of income, or, you know, what causes which, I guess is what I'm asking.
And that's a great question and goes really back to the complexity of the intersectionality, because they are all tied together and you can't actually separate them. So we kind of need to be doing them all at once. And so, yeah, so and then there's a lot of reasons why homes are dysfunctional. Not all of them have to do with poverty, although a lot of them do. And a lot of them actually, a lot of dysfunction really comes from trauma. And so I think really dealing with the adverse childhood experiences and also dealing and healing from adult trauma that we have is very important to that.
Commissioner Soniga, I wish there was an easy answer to that question. And certainly as someone who works with kids on a regular basis and sees those impacts, I'm sure it's also means a lot to us to be able to know what to do, what kind of actions do we take to try to prevent these situations or support families. We do have a number of family support programs that we offer in Lane County. So I mean, that is one of the most important things that we can do, at least in public health. And I think obviously as a board, you have other divisions and other departments doing things to support families. But the programs that we do in our school-based programs that are in the prevention program that are funded by our CCOs are really impactful in supporting families. We have the Triple P parenting program. We have some other parent support programs as well as behavior-based programs, interventions. And that team, the CCO prevention team, is often looking at what else they can do to provide family supports. That is a real central focus for the work that happens in that group as well.
I think maybe another point that that strikes me in terms of what you speak about regarding community and the building of a community, that when we're in a circumstance where every family is kind of handling their own, it's tough. I mean, even me as a very wealthy, privileged member of the community, I can't make everything for my kids. And you look at folks who are working evening jobs, our single parent households, all of the other pieces, and how can we develop that sense of community where families aren't by themselves in helping to support their children? I think that's a really important piece for us to think about. What are the policy opportunities? And I would be curious to hear more in terms of exploration of this relationship with community. It's a theme I've heard even in something like the MLK Commons, where so many of our calls for service decreased dramatically when COVID restrictions lifted and we were able to build community in that location, and the health of the community improved. That's a microcosm, but I think it's indicative of kind of a broader trend.
Thank you, Commissioner. Then I have a couple of quick comments / questions. Great presentation, and if you go online, if anyone goes online, there's a wealth of information surrounding not just the CHIP, but the progress toward the MAP goals and strategic priorities of the CHIP. So I won't go into details on all of the things, and I rarely get to ask questions directly of Dr. Lutke. I'm not going to today, because I'm going to focus on one particular item. That is really of utmost importance, and we've said it across the board as a Board of County Commissioners, and that is housing. The fact that people can't afford houses here is generational. Parents who raise their children find themselves painfully aware that their children are not going to be able to afford to buy a home if that's what they want to do in Lane County, in Eugene in particular. And through the years, I've spent lots of years on the Eugene City Council, I've spent years in the legislature, I've spent years here. Over and over and over again, we do things that make housing more expensive. I'm not going to go into details on some of those things, but sometimes it's land use, sometimes it's code, sometimes it's housing code itself, sometimes it's availability of materials and labor. But there are so many things that we do that make housing more expensive. And we have to begin to address that, because as we know, and I'll pull up the statement exactly what you said, that housing, the access to housing has a direct impact on the health of the community, on the health of individuals and the health of families. We know that. So we have to do every single thing that we can do, whether it's as a Board of Health, whether it's a Board of County Commissioners, or using our leverage to cause other adjacent jurisdictions to do the same, to make housing more affordable. Now, sometimes it's land use, and sometimes it's the codes that are a part of land use, and sometimes it's something that came up in the agenda setting this morning, it's interpretation of the state rules, how counties can interpret state rules in different ways that allow for freer access to building homes. We'll talk about that next week. As a matter of fact, there's an agenda item next week that talks about the ability to have housing outside of urban growth boundaries due to what's called the housing crisis, in order to address the housing crisis. We have a housing crisis. It's been stated, and we know this as the Board of Health and as you professionals in the room, you know that people who don't have housing are vulnerable to all kinds of epidemics, all kinds of mental health issues, all kinds of other issues that surround the poverty and lack of housing. So this is a Board of Health statement. We need to do what we can, every single thing that we can in our power as a Board of Health, as a Board of County Commissioners, and to leverage adjacent jurisdictions to create more affordable housing, more housing across the board. Any housing produces affordable housing. Now, I'm going to give you a case in point. I live in Bethel, love Bethel. The reason we moved there, I worked at a company in Bethel, and we bought our initial house. We bought a mobile home in Springfield. We sold it, got a down payment for a house in Bethel, because that's where you could afford housing. And it just happened to be close to Jerry's, where I worked at the time, but that's where you could afford housing. Now, I live in Bethel still, and I had a real estate agent pin a note on my door the other day, bragging about the cost of housing. And a house down the street from our house in Bethel, the most affordable housing in the city of Eugene, generally speaking, in Bethel. It went on the market a few weeks ago for $480,000 and sold within 2 days of going on the market for $500,000. That's affordable housing in Bethel. We don't have it. So we can wring our hands all we want about how housing inequity causes an imbalance in health, in the health of the families, and the health of the individuals, and the health of our community. But until we do something about housing, until we force ourselves to make tough decisions about housing, then we're going to continue with the housing crisis, and we're going to continue to say people who don't have affordable housing, people who don't live in housing that is decent, sanitary, and accessible housing are going to be more sick than other people. So that's my statement. My Board of Health statement is we need more housing. And we don't need it now, we need it yesterday. And when we discuss next week, when we talk about Lane County's interpretation of Goal 5 of the state's land use laws, then we have to find out how do we interpret it as liberally as we possibly can to allow more affordable housing. So, Dr. Ludke, thank you for being here. And sometime I'll ask you more questions. You're very generous with your ear, so I don't need to ask you questions in public. You are very generous with your ear. Thank you very much. Dr. Maxwell, good to see you also. Anything else from the board? Thank you very much. Dr. Warren, anything?
You.
Director Gray?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Then we'll step back on the agenda. Mr. Mokrycki, back to county administration. And we'll move back to item 8 on our agenda, which is, oops, that's next week's agenda. I'll look at this week's agenda instead. I apologize. There we go. Yeah.
If I could share while you're looking for that. Diane, I understand you said Metro's feed has gone down. Are we still recording the meeting? Should anyone want to be watching later? Can you give a status on that?
We are still recording, and it is still up on cable TV. We just are not webcasting at this time.
And thank you, Vice Chair, for pointing that out. Then we'll move back to item 8A, which is Order 2306-06-
You'll want to recess.
Oh, thank you so much. Remind that we will recess the joint meeting of the Board of Health, Board of County Commissioners, and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners. And now we'll move on to county administration. Would you like to repeat your question as the Board of County Commissioners now? Oh, okay, you don't think you need to, all right. Then we'll move on to item 8A, County Administration Order 23-06, 06-06, in the matter of rejoining Association of ONC Counties and remitting membership dues. Mr. Mokrasky, you have with you a panel today, and I'll ask you to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. Steve Adams, our policy director, is here to walk you through a draft order that we put together at the board's request based on your prior action to pursue this matter. So we'll walk through that. I think Steve has some information to share and then answer any questions. And the order is for the board to take action on. Steve?
Okay. Mr. Mokrasky, thank you. Chair Farr, Vice Chair Trieger, Commissioners, good morning. It's a pleasure to be before you. 2 weeks ago, you assigned staff the task of bringing back to you an item to support your deliberations around the question of whether Wayne County should rejoin the Association of ONC Counties, AOCC, not to be confused with the Association of Oregon Counties, AOC. The ONC lands encompass 2.6 million acres in Oregon. There's nearly 375,000 acres of ONC-managed lands here in Wayne County. The lands, of course, revested back to federal government ownership in 1916, and they've long been under the management of the Federal Department of Interior, currently under the Bureau of Land Management. There's really a fascinating history here from the original federal railroad grants that includes really kind of incredible corruption in the late 19th century. Stories involving both state and federal officials, incredibly colorful history, Supreme Court cases, and multiple acts of Congress beginning in 1916 and moving forward, all the way up into the most recent mention in federal law of the ONC work, particularly around the secure rural schools, came in the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, in which our federal delegation was successful in tucking some SRS continuation language into that particular legislation. So currently, within the AOCC, we have 14 members on the board of directors. So specifically, we have all of them are county commissioners, and they represent Clackamas, Columbia, Coos, Douglas, Jackson, Josephine, Klamath, Lincoln, Len, Marion, Polk, Tillamook, Washington, and Yamhill counties. So of the remaining counties that are home to ONC lands are Benton, Curry, Wayne, and Multnomah County, which are not currently members. Should Wayne County join, the board then would be in a position of selecting a member of this board of county commissioners to become a representative of Wayne County on the AOCC board of directors. Because we're a charter county and we have 5 members on this board, AOCC rules is that member would have 3 votes rather than just 1 vote in the case of the constitutional county, which tends to have just three county commissioners. Commissioners, before you is an order prepared by the staff that would affect the direction provided should you choose to do so. So the order directs staff to prepare materials necessary for Wayne County to resume membership status. We would have to determine the exact membership dues. There's a formula involved, so we have to do math and do the calculation, and then work, of course, with budget and administration to bring that back to you as a budget amendment is the way that this is styled. That, Chair Farr, is the presentation for today.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Ms. Mokrasky, Ms. Pettigrew, anything to add?
Thank you, Chair.
Very good. Then I'll turn it over to the board for discussion. We have before us item June 6, 2023, order number 6. So, Commissioner Seneca.
I just had a question there, Steve. Out of the non-members, you probably don't have their square acreage versus ours.
Not in front of me, Commissioner Sinegal.
I was just curious size-wise if, you know, who's got the largest plate at the table, if you will.
Chair Farr, Commissioner Sinegal, Douglas County is the largest county by acreage. We're the second.
I'll second.
What can we do about that?
Yeah.
No,
How do we win?
I hate being second, don't you? Okay, further discussion? Commissioner Buck?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just continue, even though I've said this before at prior meetings, but for the record and for those that are watching, I want to continue to express my concern regarding joining the association, specifically around transparency. This association is made up of a board of county commissioners that are paid for with taxpayer money. The dues are paid for with taxpayer money. And when this board meets, they exclude the public. That pays those dues and those salaries. For me, that is a clear transparency issue. And in addition to that, there is not a policy within this association to be transparent with what they're doing with their financial budget. If we are utilizing all taxpayer money for participation in an association, it should be available for the public to watch. The funding and budgeting should be available to the public at any time. And that's not happening. That is, for me, just a line of transparency that I won't cross. I think the public is due that information, especially when you're utilizing their money, their hard-earned tax dollars. Should this board continue to go down the route of joining the group again, I would expect that minutes be sent to all board members of all participating counties. The budget also be shared with all members of all participating counties. And that any member of the board should be able to participate or view a meeting, and that the public be available in some manner to watch those board meetings. There are lots of comments that we've received in the last couple of weeks regarding what the board does or does not advocate for. That is yet a separate argument on joining or not joining this association. I have always stood on the side of transparency, and I expect that transparency from Lane County, especially when we are consulting an agency to be a part of. And I hope that you will consider that in your deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the discussion.
Chair?
Second
Rebuttal that?
round. Go ahead.
Yeah, just, we've kind of had this conversation already. All minutes are available to participating counties. Entire budget is available to participating counties. Participating counties can publish this if they would like. The only thing that they do not completely divulge is current litigation, for good reason. I mean, I think county council would agree with that. So they are transparent, and you can go as public. I've done it before I was elected, and I was looking at all the different, when we pulled out of the AOCC, what is the AOCC? So I've done my due diligence, and I've done my homework, and these are concerns that I had that were brought up. And those are the answers I've received.
Anybody else in the first round? Then we'll go Vice Chair Trigger, then we'll come back to you in the second round.
Thank you. I think the outcome of the vote we're about to take is clear, and there'll always be differing opinions and perspectives on this board and in the public. I will note that several members of this board expressed interest in hearing from the public. By my count, it's been about 3.5 to 1 from the public to not join versus to rejoin in this latest iteration over these last couple of weeks, at least what we've received in public comment and showing up here today. But that said, one thing I think we all agree on is the need for more revenue for Lane County, and particularly for general fund dollars. So I'm going to hold that thought when we have other opportunities that look to bring us more revenue. I think if the idea is that this may be a way to do that through lobbying for more receipts off of federal timberland, regardless of what we think about the environmental impacts of that strategy. If advocacy and lobbying is effective, and I believe it is, I think using these dollars to seed additional staffing in our intergovernmental affairs team and our policy team would be a more flexible, responsive, effective use of these dollars than participating in an industry-sponsored association. On the transparency issue, I share the concerns that Commissioner Buck has expressed, and I specifically want to address comments that were made the last time we discussed this about how we give tax dollars to nonprofit organizations. The difference there is that is through grants and contracts. There are clear parameters for how those dollars are to be used, and there is accountability of those dollars being reported back on. It is a completely different circumstance of how we invest dollars. So personally, I think this is an absolute fool's errand if the goal is to bring more revenue into Lane County, but if it is the will of the majority of this board, then it is. Things break one way or another on any given week, and I accept that. The one question I have, and I don't know if County Council is prepared to answer this, but there has been conversation about litigation, and when we're a member of this association, I don't understand what our opportunity is to either participate or not participate in litigation and how those decisions are made and what kind of risk exposure there might be or what kind of agreement we might get to have as a board to become party to litigation by virtue of membership in this association. And if you're not prepared, that's fair, but that is something that is of great concern and that I need to learn more about.
Chair, Vice Chair Trieger, if I may, I am not familiar with the degree of participation of County Council with respect to the association's decision-making, whether there's conflict checks and other screens, and the degree of influence that each particular member may have in the direction of litigation. So unfortunately, I'm not able to comment on that at this time. I could certainly work with the association leadership to find out more information and provide a supplemental briefing to the board if that is desired.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. First round, Commissioner Lovell.
Yeah, thank you. Just kind of response on some of the things about what the ONC does and what they do for us economically. In 2022, the AOCC staff was able to recover a little over $1.6 million that the BLM incorrectly sequestered at 5.7% from the fiscal year of 2021. Secure Rural Schools payment was in turn distributed to all the ONC counties. Lane County received an additional $239,766 as a result of those direct efforts. So if you're looking for just one item on an ROI, return on investment of taxpayer money of $80,000, that's not a bad return. Secondly, in 2023, just recently also, they worked with the BLM on a discrepancy with an appraisal for a timber sale in Lane County, and by adjusting the appraisal, which the AOCC discovered, the ONC counties will potentially receive an additional $400,000. So when you're looking for an agency that's looking out for your best interest and to make sure you get the money that is due you by the law, by the Association of Oregon Counties arrangement with the federal government, this agency is one of those guys that doesn't let any rock go unturned. In fact, in 2016, the AOCC filed a lawsuit against the federal government about its management plans. And we're seeing a lot of those management plans mismanaged for us, go up in flames along with other instances and climate issues and all that kind of thing. But it's a contributor to the fires is the mismanagement of our forests. The DC court has ruled that the BLM management plan is not in compliance with the ONC Act. So the federal government not only is not keeping up with their word, they're also not keeping up on their management of our forests that all of us are crucial to our environment and our enjoyment as citizens.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell. And I'll take I'll just a couple of quick things and then the first round, I'll go to you, Commissioner Buck. During the Budget Committee meetings, I said people could stand at that mic figuratively and talk to us about it, and people have done such. We've heard from a number of people. I got a letter from, we all got a letter from the mayor of Springfield, who I asked if I could cite some of his words, and he said it was okay to do so. I may do that in a few moments, but I'm not going to right now. Really, an issue for me is, in fact, transparency. It should be an issue for every single one of us, transparency, because we don't want to hide things ever. We don't want people to be surprised by things that they find out that we have done, that we did surreptitiously. That happened a few years ago, and people were mad, weren't they? But you know, but we do things that really aren't subject to public scrutiny. We have executive sessions, right? Now, while we don't make decisions in executive sessions, we do say things in executive session that the public doesn't get to hear us say. Sometimes it's regarding employment. Sometimes it's regarding collective bargaining. Sometimes it's regarding litigation. Those things that we say don't come out in the general public. If they did, maybe the general public would have a different view of the way each of us actually represents them as a commissioner. But we don't. The public doesn't hear what we say in executive session. So, you know, transparency is something that I am really strongly in favor of. And spending $80,000 of public money is something that I don't take very lightly. That is a big deal. We spend a lot of general fund money on a lot of different things. Sometimes it's on contractual basis, sometimes it's on dues, sometimes it's on salaries. But we spend a lot of public money on different things. And I believe that we do need to make certain that people are aware of what ONC counties do in terms of their lobbying efforts that are successful or unsuccessful, and how their budget is spent. And I believe that based on what Commissioner Seneca has cited, we can demonstrate that. So transparency is important. And lest people think that I don't think transparency is important, it is important. I just wish that some of the things that I say and we all say in executive session, that the people could hear what we say. You know, because then real transparency would be occurring, wouldn't it? But it doesn't in that situation, but it will in this situation. So we'll move on to the second round. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I hear that their minutes have been given, or the budget has been given, or that people are okay with people coming into these meetings, and I have yet to see that happen. When I came on board in 2019, and we were members at that time, that did not occur. So it can be claimed, but I have yet to see it in reality happen. And that's where my concerns come from. And although I will not be voting for this particular item, I will await to see if that really happens. And as noted, they will have executive sessions to talk about what litigation they want to be involved in. My concern is that we will be, as a county, asked to participate in particular litigation suits that only one member of our board, as part of AOCC's board, will actually vote on. And I will also just note Commissioner Traeger's concern on what that litigation is and how we, as a board, if we are asked to participate in that litigation, that we, as a full board, are the ones that are going to be involved in understanding what that is, what the ask is, and what it means as a participant in those cases. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Then I'll just go in the second round myself for one quick thing. You know, we have membership in different boards as individual county commissioners, and we do trust the commissioners' vote on one board, on the board. I get a vote on MWMC. I don't ask y'all how I should vote. I vote on MWMC, you know. I vote on MPC. Don't ask y'all how I should vote. I vote on MPC. Since 1995, I voted on Human Services Commission. I don't anymore, but I didn't ask particularly how to vote. That's not the way it generally works. We don't seek, but we trust the member that we put on the different boards and commissions that we're on. Association of ONC Counties, we're in the process of determining who's going to be our member of the board on ONC, Association of Oregon Counties. Well, what does that board do? Well, one action that it took a few years ago is it fired the executive director, and only one member of the Lane County Board of Commissioners had any discussion about firing that executive director of AOC. Now, how much do we pay to AOC annually?
Chair Farr, it's approximately $80,000.
Yeah. So, and so, you know, I mean, so really, I think it's kind of a red herringish kind of argument that we're having here regarding the transparency and one vote, one, et cetera. And really, the return on the investment is something that we need to take a look at. And my vote ultimately is going to be based upon, do we get what we pay for? I am going to say what Mayor Van Gordon has asked. Mayor Van Gordon said, while it is vital to county services, it is also significant to communities like Springfield, Oregon. Effective management of ONC lands has contributed millions to our communities and created family wage jobs. We need Lane County's involvement in the AOCC to ensure our needs are reflected at the state and national levels. So, you know, we have different opinions, and sometimes it's just an opinion, sometimes it's a fact, and sometimes it's stated as a fact when it's not actually a fact. And sometimes some people believe it when they shouldn't believe it because it's not the truth. So the fact is, do we get a return on the investment? I believe we do, and that's where my vote is going to lie on this particular item when the order is brought before us. Further discussion. Then we have before us an order. It's order number 23-06-06 and number 06. That is the 2023 June 6 order number 6. Do I have a motion?
Chair, I'd like to move that we approve Order 23-06-06-06 in the matter of rejoining the Association of ONC Counties and remitting membership dues.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Lovell, seconded by Commissioner Senega. Order 23-06-06-06. Discussion to the motion. I see no discussion, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Passes 3-2 with Commissioners Buck and Vice Chair Trieger voting no on reinstatement to a Association of ONC Counties. Mr. McRicey.
Very briefly, just a quick elections update, and then we'll have the final, final elections update next week. Today is the deadline to cure a signature challenge. Currently, there are 785 challenge ballots that can be cured and counted. The dashboard that our elections team has put together will be refreshed to reflect the updated challenge and cured numbers tomorrow after we've received all those cured ballots today and those have been processed. Elections results will be published tomorrow and will include all cured ballots. The final official election results will be published next Monday, June 12th, and the dashboard will be updated to reflect final returns at that time. And then, again, the update that we have next Tuesday will be the last for this election cycle. So we'll have more sort of final details for you next week, but importantly, today is the last day to for those 785 ballots for any of those to be cured.
Thank you, Ms. Morgasky. Any comments or questions for Mr. Morgasky? I'll just say I had a chance to observe the day after the election. I was over there and I got to look around. Boy, what a well-oiled machine that department is. I'm really highly impressed by the openness, the transparency, and we'll use the word again, transparency, and the ability to get the job done. It's daunting, the work they do. I mean, it's unbelievable, the work they do over there. Okay. Then we'll move along. We do have need for executive session today. Let's see.
Sure, we have item 9.
We're on item 9, which is County Council. Thank you. We took Board of Health out of order. So, County Council, Ms. Pettigrew.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Good morning. Just a couple of brief announcements today. First, you might see some new faces in the hallways. We have welcomed 2 law clerks in their Rising 3Ls at the University of Oregon School of Law. They have already dug in and are taking on some complex legal questions and helping us across a broad range of departments. Very happy to have law students here with us to mentor and to expose to the kind of interesting work that we do here in the county. And so if you see them, please take a minute to say hello. I also want to announce today that we are now in the sandbox of our public records software, our new public records software management tool. We're going to be working through some of the issues that we may encounter once we launch and looking at any tweaks that we may need to make in terms of the software development and allowing our leading clients who do a lot of the work in public records responses to take a look at the tool and see what they think. Finally, I'd like to share that we are in final negotiations as well for our case management software, which we've talked about before, which will provide us more transparency and tracking tools for the legal work that we do in our office. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pettigrew. Any questions? Well, good news all around. Thank you. It's always good to hear good news on a beautiful sunny day. And if you look through the back window, you'll see that Farmers Market is in operation today. So if you have a chance during your lunch break today, visit them, buy something, and eat it tonight. Then with that, we do have need for a cause for executive session today. Following my gaveling is into executive session, we will return in regular session at the Board of County Commissioners at 1:30 here in Harris Hall. Today's executive session will be conducted remotely, so we'll conduct it from our own offices remotely today.
Bless you.
Unless we all want to sit together in the...
We're not in the BCC?
It says just remote. Ms. Jones?
You can do either. It's a hybrid.
It is a hybrid. Okay, very good. It says on my order here, remote meeting. But, okay, very good. So it is a hybrid. So we will be in the BCC, and we'll reconvene in the BCC at 11:15 after I read this into executive session. The Board of Commissioners will meet in executive session to consult with legal counsel concerning legal rights and duties regarding current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. If I read this verbatim, it says likely to be filed, likely to be filed. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602H, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. We reserve the right to come back into public session should the need arise.